Hello and welcome to the Caring Matters podcast. I'm Liz Tassone and I'm here today with Ken Czillenger. Ken is a grief educator in the Cincinnati area, and he's going to talk to us today, and a longtime caregiver, and he's going to talk to us today about conversations that need to be started. So Ken, tell us the generation of this idea for you. I know you're going to be giving a talk on this and so on. But
right. A number of things probably converged in order for this to happen, but an experience I had that highlights it, I think, is that I teach a course called Life Through Death at the College of Mount St. Joseph, and one of the forms in which I've taught it is an annual spirituality institute that the Mount has had on campus in June. And now, last year, this would have been as a part of the institute, in addition to a course that I teach, they have 3 of the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they have keynote talks. And so I've given one of the talks, and it's around the idea of pastoral care in the hospice setting. And this past year, in giving the presentation, I mentioned a book written by a man named Ira Byock, who's well known nationally and internationally for his work in palliative care and hospice. And the title of the book is The 4 Things That Matter Most. And the 4 things that matter most are being able to say, please forgive me, I forgive you, I love you, thank you. Well, I mentioned this book, and then this is in June. Then in September, I was giving a presentation to spiritual directors over in Hyde Park. And this woman comes up to me before the talk and says, I just want to let you know that after you gave that talk and mentioned this book, I went out and bought it. And she said, what I've been able to do as a result of that is be reconciled with my brother. Wow. And so I asked her to write up the experience of how this all evolved. And she wrote 2.5 pages. And one thing that you see is this doesn't only have to be that this is a conversation where there had been hurt between a sister and a brother. It doesn't have to be a conversation where there's hurt involved. But it's sort of like, as I studied these 2.5 pages, one of the things you saw is somebody has to initiate the conversation. And so in this case, she initiated the conversation. And the way she did it, she sent her brother an email. Now, to back up, or to kind of do a little aside, she had previously had a close relationship with her brother. One of the things that happened, though, is that her brother had begun to borrow money from his parents, and she was more or less managing money, and he was not paying them back. So that was a piece that led to some of the hurt that took place, and so she really had some strong feelings about her brother. So she sends him this email, inviting him to have lunch together, and he accepts the invitation. And they had lunch together, and they just were able to talk things out in the sense that they had been close in the past. They didn't want to continue this relationship with the distance that had been created, and so they did. They had a wonderful conversation, were reconciled, and then interestingly enough, shortly after the conversation, her brother sent her a check to partly repay his debt, so to speak.
Wow.
But she did not bring it up in the meeting, which was very important, that she didn't have that expectation that
that wasn't the purpose of her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she didn't put him on the defensive then in the conversation. Now, it's not always going to work out that way, but I think it shows the value of conversation. And so, people who are connected to this program, one of the things that you might ask yourself is that you might say, early here into 2013, as you look out at your life right now, is there anyone with whom it would be valuable for you to have a conversation? Most likely, unless the other person initiates it between now and then, most likely you may have to do the initiating. But this could be on anything. I think of a good friend of mine. He wanted to deepen his relationship with with his son, and he invited him out for lunch, and they had lunch, and then he asked his son, he said, this means a lot to me. Could we continue to do this? And he said, yes. So it could be a father-son situation in which, in this case, the son was out of town a lot with his work. He also has a number of children, and so hard to squeeze in that time. And yet his dad wanted to get to know him better, you might say.
Yeah.
So it could be a family member. It could be a conversation that needs to, for some people it may be, it would be valuable for them to have a conversation with a physician. Maybe there are things that they're experiencing that they are keeping to themselves or whatever, but it might be valuable to a physician. It could be in a work-related situation. All different kinds of situations. If you look at the people who are a part of your life, might there be value in starting a conversation with someone? And as I say, you never know. Sometimes a person, he could have, this woman's brother could have rejected the invitation,
right.
Or he might have misinterpreted. He could have said, no, because all you're going to do is you're going to try to get me to pay that money, which would have been wrong. That wasn't her intent. And something happened early in that process where he trusted that that isn't why that she got him there that day.
Wow. So there's some vulnerability on the part of the initiator, I would think.
That's right.
When you're beginning a conversation.
That's right. You could be rejected.
Yeah. So you have to play that out and realize that it's a vulnerable place,
right.
but you're willing to take that.
Right. I think that it's a risk. There also has to be the hope that there can be conversation. So it may be that in some cases the person, that would not be a good thing to do because they're not ready for it. It may spark them just flying off the handle and kinds of things like that. So that, but some cases that would be the risk you would take.
And the truth is, if the relationship is broken now, it probably won't get worse by initiating a conversation.
You would hope that it wouldn't.
If you're not talking with someone,
right.
At least you've made an effort that might really lead to some healing for, And I think there's always this place of, it goes back to our previous conversation and podcast about helplessness, that place of, in the conversation of being kind of open, and rather than trying to fix someone, this helpless place of just being there.
That's right.
And that might help generate healing.
And I think this is very necessary in the times in which we live, because this is something that you wouldn't get through texting or other kinds of means where you don't have, and you could have this conversation over the phone, so you could, but I think the ideal setting is that when you can be face-to-face with someone.
Right.
Now, of course, with Skype and other things with our technology today, but the ideal is, I think, just to have that face-to-face conversation with someone.
Yeah, out to lunch or out to dinner or whatever,
yes.
Food involved, that always helps.
Sure, that's right, the ambiance.
That's right, that's right.
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you for this. I think that's important information. Is there any more on this topic that you wanted to address in terms of conversation? Just a place of initiating.
That's right, and then a more complicated situation is when like this situation where there was hurt involved. That can be difficult, and so I think that's sometimes you have to think that through. You may need some help with a third party or someone to guide you or to bounce off, so that it's going to be a successful experience.
Right. So
and the timing. So you may take the initiative. The timing of when you do it, like in this case, maybe this woman, I'll call her Mary. She may have had, let's say she's involved with a counselor. They might help them in terms of when to do it, give some questions to ask, kind of a third party, whoever that would be, because sometimes it may not be the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Now may not be the time to initiate the conversation.
Okay.
So it's more, because when we're dealing with relationships, things can be very complex, and so I don't want to oversimplify what we're talking about here.
But this is food for thought.
Yes, it
for
is.
Our caregivers.
Yes.
Where might that conversation be in your life that needs to be had?
And especially where I would start is a conversation where you're not at a distance from that person, you're not alienated from them. I think it would be good to start with a conversation that you would pretty well feel is going to succeed, you know. It's like this father-son.
Yeah.
You know, that you would hope that your son would, and there wasn't any friction between the father and the son. It's just the father expressing a need. And,
yeah. And the son
complied.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Very important topic. Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
And I also want to thank our sponsors, Vitas Hospice, Hillebrand Home Health, Home Care by Blackstone, Family Bridges Home Care, Lifespan, and Bailey. Again, I want to thank our guest, Ken Czillenger, and I'm Liz Tassone, and always remember that caring matters.